The Caribbean night is quiet, yet the sea never truly rests. Gentle waves lap against distant ships, and the moon casts silver streaks across the dark water. Even on calm nights, sailors whisper in low, nervous tones about a ship that drifts silently through fog and shadow, never reaching port. They call it the Flying Dutchman, a vessel cursed to wander the oceans for eternity, carrying the restless spirits of those who once sailed under its tattered sails. To glimpse it, sailors say, is to invite misfortune, or perhaps worse, a brush with death itself. Long ago, in the 17th century, Dutch ships navigated these waters, mapping unknown territories and facing storms that could rip sails from the strongest masts. Among these voyages, one ship vanished during a violent tempest, leaving behind only whispers of its existence. Witnesses glimpsed it through thick fog, sails moving though no wind blew, faint lights flickering on the deck, shadows shifting where no living crew could stand. From that night onward, the Flying Dutchman became a story passed from port to port, whispered by sailors nursing mugs of rum or huddled by tavern fires. Each retelling added new details. Some claimed the figurehead twisted toward the living ships. Others swore the deck shuddered under invisible footsteps. Mariners swore the wind itself carried the sound of orders barked centuries ago. The Dutchman appeared most often when storms gathered or mist thickened at night. A ghostly glow illuminated its tattered sails, casting reflections on the water, while the silhouette of its captain and crew flickered in and out of sight. Even the bravest sailors spoke of fleeting glimpses, lights glowing from the captain's cabin, ropes swinging, though no wind moved them, faint echoes of commands across the mist. Ships that pursued the Dutchman were often never seen again, swallowed by storms that seemed almost alive. The legend spread to taverns, where merchants, pirates, and fishermen recounted tales of phantom sails, a captain who refused to bow to nature, and a ship that could never anchor. Some claimed the Dutchman was a warning, respect the power of the ocean or face a fate beyond imagination. Others insisted it was the restless spirit of a man doomed to wander forever. Whatever the truth, the story endured, passing from sailor to sailor, tavern to tavern, whisper to whisper. Even now, when fog hangs heavy and the moon is pale, one might imagine the ghostly vessel drifting just beyond the horizon, reminding all who hear the tale that the sea is alive with secrets. The tale grows darker when one considers the captain of the Flying Dutchman. He was proud and defiant, known for his audacity and refusal to bow to the sea. Sailors whispered that he challenged storms as if they were rivals, commanding his crew with an iron hand and fearless heart. It was this arrogance that earned him the eternal curse. The story begins on a night when the Caribbean churned under a furious storm. Waves towered like mountains, and the wind roared with a voice as old as the ocean. Most captains would have sought shelter, but the Dutchman's captain vowed to sail beyond the horizon, to reach lands no other ship had touched. In that moment, the ocean seemed to recoil, and the storm itself whispered a warning that went unheeded. From that night onward, the ship and its crew were doomed. The Dutchman would roam forever, never touching port. Its crew became shadows of men, bound eternally to the vessel. Sailors claimed that when the ship appeared, a chill ran down the spine, warning that no mortal should confront it. Even from afar, the captain's gaze was said to pierce the hearts of men, an unseen presence commanding the seas. Accounts from witnesses described the captain at the helm, motionless, yet guiding the ship through storms with uncanny precision. Lightning illuminated his figure, revealing ghostly eyes burning with unnatural light. The crew moved like shadows, performing impossible tasks as if guided by a force beyond the natural world. Ships that glimpsed the Dutchman often experienced storms intensifying, sails tearing, and crews falling ill or vanishing. In taverns along the Caribbean, sailors leaned over mugs of rum to recount the captain's tale. Candlelight flickered on charts and maps, shadows moving across walls as though alive. Patrons shivered, imagining a man who defied both nature and death, bound eternally to the sea. The captain's story became a warning: no man can conquer the ocean, and arrogance invites a fate darker than any storm. Even tonight, one can imagine the Dutchman cutting silently through fog, the captain at the helm, a figure terrifying and mesmerizing. Lightning flashes across the deck, revealing ghostly crew, and the waves crash with a life of their own. The captain's curse endures, a reminder that the sea demands respect and some fates are inevitable. Stories of the Flying Dutchman spread quickly among sailors, each tale more haunting than the last. Mariners leaned over mugs of rum in dimly lit taverns, recounting fleeting glimpses of the ghostly ship, their voices trembling with fear and awe. They spoke of sails that moved though no wind blew, of lights flickering along the deck like the souls of the damned, and of shadows shifting where no living crew could stand. Some men hid below deck, paralyzed by dread, praying that the phantom vessel would pass them by. Each retelling added new details, as if the ship itself grew with the story. Some said the figurehead's eyes glowed with a spectral light, twisting toward approaching ships as if to warn or curse them. Others swore that ropes swung despite calm air, and that faint ghostly commands echoed across the waves, carrying voices of sailors long dead. Patrons of taverns shivered at the thought of seeing the Dutchman in the dead of night, imagining themselves on the pitch-black sea with nothing but fog and moonlight to guide them. Mariners often described their encounters with uncanny precision. Some reported the ghostly ship appearing suddenly out of thick mist, its tattered sails billowing and deck dimly illuminated by an eerie glow. The captain stood motionless at the helm, and the crew moved like shadows, performing tasks without ever touching the rigging. The very air seemed charged, heavy with the knowledge that a curse was near. Those who saw it spoke of a sudden chill, of waves behaving as if alive, and of the overwhelming sense that this was no ordinary ship. Even entire crews were sometimes driven to madness or mutiny after glimpsing the Dutchman. Fear spread quickly, and voyages were abandoned, sometimes forever. Some ships pursued the ghost, only to be swallowed by storms, leaving no trace of men or vessel behind. Over time, these stories became warnings passed down among sailors. Respect the sea, respect the unseen, and never underestimate the power of a ship bound by eternal curse. The tales grew darker in taverns as the rum flowed. Maps of the Caribbean were laid out on tables, candle flames flickering across charts as old sailors traced phantom routes, pointing to places where the Dutchman had been seen. Patrons leaned in, eyes wide, imagining ghostly sails cutting across the horizon and the haunting presence of a captain who would never rest. Even those who had never seen the ship felt its weight, the tension in the stories making them shiver as if the ocean itself were present in the room. These mariners' tales were more than superstition, they became lore. Each retelling preserved the essence of the legend. A cursed ship, a captain defiant against the sea, and a crew trapped in eternal wandering. The Flying Dutchman was no longer just a ghost. It was a symbol of the ocean's mystery and terror, a reminder that the sea is a living, unforgiving force. As the stories of the Flying Dutchman spread from port to port, they began to take on a life of their own. No longer merely warnings whispered among sailors, the legend became a part of the culture of the sea, carried in songs, poems, and tales that echoed through taverns and harbors alike. Ballads were sung at night by weary crews, their voices trembling as they recounted the cursed ship, its eternal captain, and the ghostly crew bound to sail forever. The Dutchman's story entered every port and every tavern, each retelling adding color and drama. Poets and playwrights, inspired by the tales, wove it into operas and plays that terrified and fascinated audiences far from the Caribbean. Even in lands the ship had never reached, the story captivated listeners with its blend of daring adventure and supernatural horror. The essence remained unchanged. A captain defying the sea, a ship cursed to roam endlessly, and sailors doomed to serve beyond death. In taverns, old sailors would lean close to listeners, pointing to maps and charts, tracing the supposed courses of the Dutchman across foggy seas. Candle flames flickered, casting long shadows that danced on the walls, mirroring the ghostly movements of the ship. Patrons imagined themselves on a darkened deck, with only the moonlight and the eerie glow of the ship to guide them. Some whispered that the Dutchman's lights could mesmerize the living, drawing them closer to danger if they dared to stare too long. The songs themselves became a form of warning, a ritual shared from generation to generation. Sailors sang of storm-tossed nights, ghostly sails cutting through fog, and the eternal voyage of a captain who could never anchor. Every chorus, every verse, carried a shiver of dread, reminding listeners of the power of the sea and the consequences of arrogance. To hear these songs was to feel the presence of the Dutchman as tangibly as if it were cutting across the horizon before one's eyes. Legends also spread in the form of superstitions. Some sailors believed that mentioning the Dutchman's name aloud would invite misfortune. Others carried charms or tokens to protect themselves if they thought the ghost ship was near. These rituals, passed down from sailor to sailor, strengthened the ship's presence in the collective imagination. The Dutchman was no longer just a story. It had become a living part of maritime culture, a shadow that haunted both the sea and the minds of those who sailed it. Even today one can imagine tavern rooms filled with murmurs and laughter, dim candlelight reflecting on maps, and sailors leaning closer to tell the tale. They speak with reverence and fear, recounting how the Dutchman glides silently through fog, crew moving like shadows, captain at the helm, ever watching. Songs, stories, and legends preserve the mystery, ensuring that the ghost ship endures, drifting eternally through imagination as well as the waves. Sailors who dared the Caribbean waters often spoke of strange occurrences when the Flying Dutchman was near. Compasses spun wildly, pointing in impossible directions, while the wind shifted without reason. The waves seemed to have a life of their own, rising and falling with unnatural timing, as though the sea itself obeyed a hidden command. Even the stars in the night sky appeared to waver and dance, making navigation nearly impossible. Those who encountered the Dutchman felt a weight pressing upon them, a sense that they were being watched by eyes that had long ceased to belong to the living. Stories tell of ghostly lights glimmering across the deck, strange shadows moving with purpose, and faint echoes of orders carried across the waves. Sailors claimed they heard footsteps on the deck above them, voices calling commands in languages they had never learned. Some reported seeing the captain at the helm, unmoving, yet somehow guiding the ship through storms with unnatural precision. The crew moved like wraiths, performing tasks that seemed impossible for living men. To witness these phenomena was to confront a reality that defied reason and logic, a glimpse into a world where the boundaries between life and death had been erased. Many ships abandoned their missions after seeing the Dutchman. Entire crews mutinied or fell into despair, refusing to continue their voyages. Some captains pursued the phantom ship, hoping to prove its legend false, only to vanish without a trace, swallowed by sudden storms or treacherous currents. The Dutchman became a living reminder of the ocean's power, a warning to all who dared challenge its might. Sailors learned quickly that respect for the sea and for its hidden mysteries was essential, for arrogance could lead to a fate worse than death, eternal wandering or sudden disappearance. These occurrences, whispered in taverns long after the sailors returned, became part of maritime lore. Rum flowed as tales were recounted of ships suddenly appearing in fog, of lights that flickered only for a few heartbeats before vanishing, and of the creeping fear that followed every sighting. Patrons leaned closer to hear the details, imagining the cold wind cutting through their coats, the spray of water against the deck, and the ghostly presence of a ship that could appear and vanish at will. Each story carried the weight of the unknown, a reminder that the oceans hold secrets that no man can ever fully understand. The Dutchman's appearances were more than superstition. They were lessons etched into the minds of every sailor who glimpsed the ghostly ship. The sea was a living force, unpredictable and eternal, and the Flying Dutchman served as its emissary, a symbol of the perils that awaited those who dared to sail without respect. Even today, the memory of strange occurrences persists, a whisper of wind, a flicker of light, a shadow passing across the deck, reminding all who hear the tale that the sea is alive, watching, and full of eternal mysteries. Even today, the legend of the Flying Dutchman endures, whispered from sailor to sailor, passed from tavern to tavern, from one storm-tossed port to the next. The ghostly ship, with its tattered sails and eerie glow, drifts silently through the fog, a vessel trapped between life and death, forever bound to the ocean. Sailors who have glimpsed it speak of a profound chill that grips the bones, of waves behaving as though alive, and of the unmistakable presence of a ship that exists outside the natural world. The Dutchman serves as a reminder that some mysteries are eternal. Its captain, cursed for defying the power of the sea, stands at the helm, unaging, unyielding, commanding his crew of shadows across the endless waters. The ship's appearance warns the living. The ocean is not merely a body of water to be crossed or conquered. It is a force beyond comprehension, alive with secrets, and it demands respect. Those who forget this lesson, the stories say, risk a fate as cruel and inescapable as the captain's own. Legends tell of fleeting glimpses where sailors see the ghostly vessel appearing and vanishing within moments, as if it exists only on the edge of perception. The ship has been reported in storms, in fog, and even under the clear light of moonlit nights, always appearing where it is least expected. Mariners describe lights flickering along the deck, shadows moving with impossible speed, and the unmistakable figure of the captain, ever at the helm, silent yet commanding. Those who encounter it rarely speak of the event more than once. The fear is too deep, the memory too vivid, and the warning too potent. Even in the safety of port, the Dutchman's presence lingers in the minds of sailors. Tales continue to be shared over mugs of rum and candlelight, the flame flickering across maps and charts, tracing phantom routes that may or may not have existed. Patrons listen with wide eyes as old mariners recount the moment the ship emerged from mist, sails full of wind that should not exist, the crew moving like shadows, obeying orders from a time long past. Each story preserves the mystery, ensuring that the Flying Dutchman continues to haunt both the sea and the imagination. Some say the ship is a warning, others claim it is a ghost of punishment for arrogance. Whether legend or truth, its story endures, a chilling reminder that the ocean is alive, vast, and beyond human control. The Flying Dutchman drifts eternally, a phantom of the Caribbean, a shadow that haunts the horizon, and a legend told wherever sailors gather to share their fears and dreams. Even now, as the wind whistles across the deck of a passing ship, one might imagine the Dutchman silently watching from afar, its lights flickering through the fog, its captain and crew bound forever to a voyage with no end. Some mysteries, it seems, are meant to remain unsolved, best told in hushed tones with rum in hand, as the waves crash endlessly into the night.